Hey, folks, thanks for joining me for this episode from the Embellish podcast. If you got here by chance, please take a moment to hit the subscribe button. Hopefully, I can be found on any podcasting platform that exists. And if you can't find me on a platform, send me an email at embellishpod@gmail.com and I'll try to get that taken care of. You can also find video versions of this podcast on YouTube. You can find all of my links on Instagram at embellishpod or TikTok with the same handle. I have a website. It is www.embellishpod.com. It's a place to pick up these links, episode details, and more. Today, I'm having a conversation with Harvey Williams from the Delta Dirt Distillery in Arkansas, and they've got a really unique product and a really unique story that is absolutely worth sitting down and listening to. Today, I have Harvey joining me from Delta Dirt. What I want to do is I want to spend a little bit of time talking about your family, right? So the concept of Delta Dirt came up from a family history of ag and a legacy of ag. You guys have farmed for a long time, so kind of give me the history of the Williams family, and then subsequently how it kind of bleeds into a distillery concept.
Okay, so I may as well start from the beginning and take you all the way back. Hey, I grew up on a farm, but it wasn't my farm or my dad's or his dad. It actually was his granddad's farm. My great grandfather, Papa Joe Williams, started farming our land back in the late 1800s, as far as my dad can recall. And he sharecropped our farm, just like a lot of farmers in the South, in the Delta. They sharecropped their land with the hopes of owning that land one day. And he never did, but his son, my granddad, which we knew affectionately as Daddy D, he sharecropped it, but was able to buy that farm in 1949. And my dad started farming after my granddad retired from farming. And it was only 86 acres, and that may sound like a lot of land to some, and may not sound like much at all to others. But it wasn't enough in the late 70s and early 80s to be farming row crop cotton, corn, and soybean. So he converted the farm mostly to a vegetable operation. That's why I guess people today call it a specialty crop. But we're in sweet potatoes, squash, yellow squash, zucchini squash have been the primary crops over the last 15 years. And then that would leave then me and my brother starting farming after my dad. But let me back up one step and tell you how my granddad bought that farm, which we only learned this 5 years ago as Don and I, my wife and I, were embarking upon this distillery. And my dad came in one day with this jug, and it's kind of a clay looking jug, big, got a little hook on the top handle on this thing. And he said, "Hey, your granddad used to do moonshine." Now, granted, we are right in the midst of this construction work for this distillery. He said, "This is one of his jugs. In fact, this is the only jug that we have left or of any evidence that would prove that he did moonshine." And, like, quite natural, I got a lot of questions. Like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Yeah." And then he went on to tell us how he bought the farm. Because of this moonshine, it runs pretty deep in the family too, because as a sharecropper, he said he picked his cotton, and you share part of that with the landowner. But in 49, he said he didn't take his cotton to the landowner's gin. He took it to a different gin, added the money he was earning on the side making moonshine, and bought the farm. Mm-hmm. So that's... I grew up, I'm an adult, I'm over 50 now, and my dad never told us this story before, but now I know. And guess what? Everybody in the family is going to know. And we've been talking about this and asking questions. I've been asking his sister and everybody in the family, like, what was that like? And my granddad didn't pass until I was in college. I could have asked him a whole lot of questions, right? Mm-hmm. But it was one of those things they just didn't talk about. So I get it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so, transitioning from sharecropper to purchasing the land was tough for anyone who sharecropped, right? And then if we look at the time frame, 1949, it was even more so tough. And then adding on to it the unique facet of being in Arkansas, being in the South, and having a Black family purchasing land to then subsist off of. that feels like there would be some significant barriers for your grandfather to purchase the land. Is there any kind of history of understanding, like, any barriers that he encountered while trying to purchase and then farm the land?
I am sure that there were barriers. I'm sure that there was a level of fear because retribution would be severe. But I am going to say this on your podcast, that it was an absolute blessing from God for him to be able to do what he did in the time that he did that. Because my dad, gave me details, and since then we've learned a few more details. But he did say that the landowner, they exchanged very few words, and they were not crazy or anything like that. But he did ask him. He said that, called him out of his name, but he said, "You sold my cotton." And my dad said, "Yeah." My granddad said, "Yes, sir, I did." And I guess there was a pregnant pause or whatever. But after that, he said, "Well, whatever you need from the store, because I guess he owned the country store too. You let me know how I can do what I can do to help you." But that was all God, in my opinion. That was all God, right, just intervening there. And then here's the other thing. My aunt told me, "Listen, after your granddad must have had a pact with himself or a pact with God, because after that land was bought, he never did moonshine again." And then I got uncles who confirmed that. And I don't know if it was just a risk thing or whatever it was. And my aunt said, after 49, we had some hard times. So I know it had to be that, because we could have used some moonshine money, after those years. So I would say that there was a tough way to go to make that decision to do that.
So you've discovered, you've unearthed, and kind of learned about your grandfather's moonshine operation with that helped to bankroll the purchase of the farm.
Yeah.
As you kind of develop out the distillery, are you now tying those two stories together, or is this just kind of a sub note to the whole situation?
Well, we're tying it together in that I guess the spirits business was running through my veins. I just didn't know it. He was making corn liquor moonshine, and I am making the first product we released, which is it's just lit up like fire, is this sweet potato vodka. And it's a blend of our sweet potatoes and corn that we're growing on the farm. But I did not have a recipe, or didn't have anything that ties me back to my granddad, other than the blood running through through my vein that belongs to him, and this farm. But this interest in being able to produce a spirit from our soil, from our ground, it just made it that much more special once I started learning more about the story. Now, this sweet potato vodka is pretty amazing too. So.
Yeah. And you said it earlier. You're exactly right. 80 acres doesn't seem like a lot whenever it comes to a commercial farming operation. If you're trying to go corn or soy or wheat or cotton, that is one field amidst hundreds of fields, right? To make it a profitable operation.
Yeah.
The pivot to a more specialty farming operation, thinking about potatoes, thinking about vegetables and whatnot, how do you make that market concept work, or how did your dad make that market concept work when shifting from understanding, farming in a different way, and then saying, okay, we're going to shift over here to, basically scale up a family garden 100-fold at this point?
Yeah. So I've always grown up believing my dad was ahead of his time, because he had what my granddad had, which was some ingenuity and really some resilience and perseverance there. Because in the 80s, a lot of farmers, not just black farmers, many farmers went out of business, because there was a saying at that time, and I remember my dad talking about this: you either get big or you get out. And I understand a lot more about what that means now, but you had very few choices. You either figure out how to lease, rent, acquire more land, get out of farming, and there were very few people who did what my dad did, which was to diversify. And he converted really into a vegetable operation. And his point was, I believe I can use this farm, this small acres, and pick vegetables and find a market. There's a way to do this, and I can be a vegetable farmer, and this small farm can sustain our family living. Now, it wasn't just a few rows either. I mean, my dad, went out and decided if we're doing squash, at one time he had gotten up to, I don't know, between 80 and 100 acres of squash. And that may not sound like a lot of squash, but
Well, that's
listen,
a lot of squash.
that's a lot of squash when you're picking it every day, every other day.
Mm-hmm.
And, this thing is growing all summer long. So in the same way with sweet potatoes, even though you plant and you dig in the fall of the year, uh, purple hull peas. I mean, it's just the big difference in that and row crop is labor, right? So there's not a machine out there that's picking this squash. This is all labor intensive, and he figured he could figure out how to do that and still make a living. So I kind of commend him for being brilliant enough to pivot and figure out how to sustain that farming operation with that small acres.
Yeah, it is a testament to ingenuity, because there was, you and I both know this, but not necessarily everybody does. There's a huge consolidation of farmland in the 80s. The ability to make a living. One of my former bosses was a farmer, and he said, if I ever won the lottery, he said I would take that money and I would farm until it was gone, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because he grew up and farmed at a time frame when the margins for making money are getting smaller and smaller, and if you're not increasing the number of acres, then you don't have it to spread it over. And so the difference between success and failure is very, very, very small decision making. But the diversification, thinking about 80 to 100 acres of squash, I've grown up in the country. We've always had a garden.
Yeah.
If you have, 2 squash plants, you've got enough to feed about 10 families, right? And this
Yeah.
is at a scale that is 1,000 or 10,000 times the size of that, because
Yeah.
I don't know what your seeding rate is, but it's going to be pretty significant. You're going to have a lot of plants, and your neighbors start hating you towards the end of the growing season with squash, because you just like, hey, here's another bag. They're like, I don't want any more. It doesn't matter. This is your problem now. I'm going to leave this on your front porch, and then you're going to have to throw it away instead of me.
Yeah. But he would find markets.
Yep.
Walmart was one of the primary customers. Benny Keith was another distributor. So he found, and what he said was, Arkansas has this band, and he looked at the country like, there's Florida, and then it comes up north of there. There's Georgia, it comes up north of there. He said, we have to catch this band when it comes across Arkansas, because when it leaves us, it's going to go to Missouri, it's going to end up in Michigan. But you have to catch your band of vegetable production when you can catch it. And
Right.
which then that actually leads into how the idea of a distillery from the farm came about, because my dad and I had a brother who kind of stayed back and helped my dad farm, and they would go to these vegetable conferences and try to figure out what's going on in the vegetable market. And he said that this guy had a booth there with some sweet potato vodka on this table, and it was in North Carolina. And I mean, my brother was really excited about all the stuff they were doing with sweet potatoes, but he just kind of mentioned that this sweet potato vodka, and that for me was exciting because it was new, it was different. We could figure out how to do that. I could still use the farm, still grow this stuff, still grow the corn, and wheat and different things, and create something from the farm. To me, it was intriguing. My wife said I got kind of obsessed with the idea, but either way, I wanted to figure out whether we could do this.
And so, and we've talked about your grandfather being on the farm and your father being on the farm. Your career took you off farm for a little bit, then brought you back on farm, and now you're on like maybe this second, third career of farmer / distiller. How did you end up back on the farm, right? Because you went off and did an ag business elsewhere for a little while.
Yeah. I went to college and got an agricultural engineering degree. Funny thing is, I thought I was going to come back and farm with my dad, but life had other choices. My wife and I got married and started a family, and really had a work for big Fortune, it's 100 company. Cargill is a big agricultural conglomerate, and I worked for another agriculture company doing food processing. And so I had a really good career in the agriculture business, from commodity to further processing. But there was always this kind of a pull to want to get back home. I guess people who leave home maybe know what that feels a little bit like. Like, will I ever move back home? Yeah, I want to. I want to be closer to family. I want to be closer to where I grew up. But it's a hard move to pick up and actually do that. And there was this thing that said, "Hey, I want to do it." There was this job opportunity came along, and I thought maybe this is it. So I took the opportunity, got closer, and really about that time, this whole distillery idea came about. So I started working on it. Did get to the point where I worked myself out of that job and left it and was full-time distilling. Now, there's a whole lot that takes place and took place between, moving to Arkansas and actually starting the distillery, working my way so I can do this full time. A lot took place, but I'm really glad that I did most days.
Mostly. Well, I mean, that sounds an awful lot like farming as well, right? Because distiller and farmer, you end up wearing a whole lot of different hats. You're a meteorologist, you're an engineer, you're a handyman, you're the guy who deals with the plumbing on any given day. You got to deal with commodity markets. It's all a really, really large thing. And you mentioned this a little bit ago. Your brother comes across this concept of sweet potato vodka, and at that point, it's just an idea, right? Like, it's an idea that you have. How do you get it into, let's make this thing? Like, what are those steps that take you from, here's an idea, now let's do it?
Yeah, well, you start asking a whole lot of questions, start reading a whole lot on the internet. And one of the best organizations that I joined, though, was the American Craft Spirits Association. And they have a conference every year. They have resources. They have people. And when I went to their conference for the first time, I got it. I got that, you can take this idea, because there were a lot of people in the same position that I was, just wanted to do it and had the idea. But how you stand that up, you've got to do a lot in terms of developing a market, have your business plan that's solid, your raw materials. In my case, I had a farm that I was going to be able to do my own raw materials, the equipment. And that was not in the least part intimidating to me, and although it can be, but because I had been doing engineering work for food processing firms, and I've been used to taking raw material, whether it's a meat product and turning that into a deli loaf or a hot dog. So that part wasn't intimidating, but this whole marketing and social media and all the things that you've got to get people enticed to want to try your product, understand that your product is unique, how you're going to differentiate yourself. That was a lot to that. And so every distillery that would let me in the door, I went in and asked a whole bunch of questions and just tried to learn, became a sponge, even as a second act of my career, right? To start absorbing.
So you've found this sweet potato vodka that you want to start making, and you start looking for a location. What is it? I guess it feels like there would be some obstacles, because whenever you want to build your distillery in Helena, Arkansas, there's not a ton of things there, right? And so you have the idea of, you could make just a distillery and then you can have an industrial operation, but you guys are actually turning this into a place to visit, right? So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so the first place was not the location where we are now. The first place, actually, I was thinking about putting it on the farm, and I had, I had already done my own drawings to lay it out how we're going to do it on the farm, and the idea of having it in Helena came about because it was nearing the fall time of the year, and there's something in Helena that is called the King Biscuit Blues Festival, which I think is the longest running, most well-attended blues festival in the nation. This thing has been running since 1986, and there are blues fans and blues musicians that come from all over the world to play at this festival. So I was sitting here with this sort of gold mine opportunity where tens of thousands of people come to this small town once a year. And if I could find a place to put it downtown Helena, this could work out real well. I mean, you know,
Mhm.
booze and blues might go together. So
It does go together. There's no might. It absolutely does go together.
yeah. So that's how the idea of kind of going on Cherry Street there in downtown Helena worked. That building that we're in was not the first building. It was a couple other buildings that we were trying to get. And it turned out as one door closed, another one opened. That one closed, another one opened, and the right one opened for us because I think it's an ideal location. It's right on the corner spot there on and down old downtown, historic downtown Helena,
Mhm.
and it's ripe for a renaissance of bringing back a town that once was like it. You know, there
Mhm.
was such you can see it in the buildings that are down there now that still remain. How intriguing this whole space was, and for commerce and for people, just enjoying life in this small town in the Delta.
It's definitely for sure, and I'm glad you touched that because that's exactly what I discovered as I was kind of doing my research and poking around on
Yeah,
Delta Dirt and your family and the location you're at, and I come across a blues festival and immediately like, well, here's another place that I need to go visit now, right? I want to
yeah.
go down there, and you hit Google Maps and you do the street view and you look around and you can tell, it definitely it has the same kind of vibes that most river towns did
Mm-hmm.
in the early parts of this nation, right, where they were, thriving centers of commerce and activity, right? You
Yep.
either had the rivers, the railroads, or those are the two things that sort of drove population centers.
Yeah.
And then as the river changed, it became more industrial. Some of those things sort of died off, but the bones still exist, and it looks like you guys have found a fantastic place to be. But you guys haven't stopped, right? As I think about Delta Dirt and I think about the product that it offers, it's not just sweet potato vodka. So tell me a
Yeah.
little bit about some of the other things that you guys are doing.
Yeah. So the first year we released, when we opened our doors, April 1st of 2021. In fact, this coming weekend, we're going to have our 4-year anniversary celebration on the 12th. So we released the sweet potato vodka. And let me tell you, this product, we thought we had something good, but you don't really know that until you actually enter it into some independent competition and they tell you,
Mhm.
yeah, you got something, or man, you guys are onto something. And we entered it into the San Francisco World Spirits Competition in 2022, and we took double gold,
Mhm.
which that was just absolutely phenomenal. And we've taken double gold for 2 additional consecutive years, which earned us platinum status for that vodka, which puts us on another stratosphere level, right?
Mhm.
But it's been entered into 7 different competitions, and we've taken the highest award in every competition we've entered, including best of class. In 23, we got to compete for one of the best vodkas in the world, identified by Forbes, and we lost out to a small company over in the UK. But imagine
Mhm.
being in that rare air where you're
Right.
one of the top 4 vodkas in the world. The next year, we released the gin, tall cotton gin, and the name came from an era of my granddad's generation, right? We're stepping in
Mhm.
tall cotton. That's a Southern thing. High cotton or tall cotton now. But we released the gin, which is that gin has never lost a what do they call it, brown bag competition. Like you go our gin against someone
Mhm.
else's. I think it makes one of the best gin and tonics you're going to ever taste. Not over juniper, not too peppery, but just the right balance and of light citrus, la juniper. I think it's an excellent gin. And then one of the most exciting things we did was last year in 24, we released the Arkansas Brown.
Mhm.
And you say, well, what is Arkansas Brown? What is that, a bourbon? Is that a whiskey? What are you talking about here? Well, it's bourbon reimagined, as my son would describe it, because my wife gets full credit for this. We wanted to do a bourbon. We were going to do a bourbon, and I submitted the approval for it to be a bourbon, but I was told by the government body that you cannot call this a bourbon because your mash bill, and I'll tell you the mash, it's corn, sweet potatoes, rye, and barley.
Mm-hmm.
It has it meets every qualification for being a bourbon, except for they said you can't you have something in your mash other than grain. And I
Right.
still remember the language. And sweet potatoes is not a grain, but it meets the corn requirement. It goes in new American oak barrels. It comes off of my steel at the right proof. So it is clearly a bourbon product, but with the sweet potato flair from our farm, just does the trick. Now, this we have been out of stock. I mean, I say out of stock. Every time we pour a barrel, we are anywhere from 24 hours to 3 weeks
Mm-hmm.
that we're sold out. Now we pour again. We poured again a couple of weeks ago, and those are going to be released on April 12th at our anniversary. And it just has taken us a while to get to the point where we're pouring a barrel every couple of months.
Mm-hmm.
And at this point, we're filling about 6 barrels a month now, and I want to get to the point where we're filling 10 to 12.
Right.
But it has been a fun journey producing this Arkansas Brown. And the name came from after they told me that you can't call that a bourbon whiskey. I'm thinking, well, okay, we're not going to be like Kentucky with Kentucky bourbon. We're not going to be like Tennessee with Tennessee whiskey. We're going to have our own category, Arkansas Brown. How about that?
Mm-hmm. I love that, and I love the innovation that's in there, right? Because you're taking an understood flavor profile and adding in something that is regionally specific and very niche, which is super great. So you guys age this, you distill it, you age it, you do everything like you would with the bourbon. Are you
Right.
using full format? Are you using 50 gallon barrels? Are you using smaller barrels?
Yeah, we started out using the smaller ones, but now we're filling 53s. And part of that was because, and maybe this happened, I don't know, it happened the way it happened. We opened up during COVID, and those who are in the industry know and understand what I'm talking about. You could not get a single barrel during COVID unless you were already had a barrel contract with those guys, and even they were put on allocation, is what they call it. Like you can only get so many of these barrels, and I couldn't get any barrels, so I did start out with the smaller barrels, and now we are in the 50. We've been in the 53s for a while now, so it's just it happened the way it happened. So your story ends up being what your story is.
Yeah, and the smaller barrel can help you get to a final product quicker, which helps you make money. That's the key. Like this is not a not for profit, right? This is not UNICEF. You've got to make some dollars to keep the doors open.
Oh yeah.
Have you noticed any difference in flavor profile from the ones that were in the smaller barrels to the ones that are maturing in the larger barrels?
I haven't yet. And in fact, we haven't poured a full 53, and the first 53 won't be ready until August of this year, at least with the year designation that we want to get out of it. But we have opened it twice, and the flavor is coming through just like it did on the smaller barrels, even though you don't keep them in there as long. At 2 years with the big barrels, we're thinking 3 years are going to be the trick for us.
So you've got a gin, you've got a vodka, you've got a whiskey product, right? I don't know how, like, maybe they're okay with calling it a whiskey. You can't call it a bourbon, whatever.
Yeah.
So you're squeezing a lot out of sweet potatoes. If I think about Arkansas, there's a lot of, and you guys on your farm are doing other specialty products. Are there any other crops that you can think of that might be value adds for spirits? Do you guys have any thoughts about using any other crops for spirits?
We have thought about it, but just haven't taken the time to pursue any of those ideas at this point. Right now, to be totally honest, we are figuring out how to scale sweet potato production and then scale sweet potato mash and distilling at the distillery. Like, I've got another still on order now because I need to get more spirits produced. So we just haven't embarked upon new innovations at this point while we're trying to grow.
So that's
it's going to happen.
Yeah, that's a good question. So what kind of a still operation are you operating now, and what are you planning to shift to?
Well, we bought a it wasn't the smallest thing. But it's not the largest either. We bought a 240 gallon pot still, and it's a versatile unit. So it's got a spirit head on top for our whiskey. It's got a 20 plate column that allows to do the gin and the vodka, and then it's got the gin basket that allows to put the botanicals in. So I wanted to get something that would allow us to have, versatility, right? You can do multiple things on this steel. But what we're not able to do then, because, producing sweet potatoes and producing the grain, it takes up a lot of time on that one steel. So what I'm working on is what we got on order is a larger steel that allows to do stripping runs of sweet potatoes. So we'll be able to produce sweet potato. That's our specialty. So I need to be able to produce more of that. And then we take that and then we do a finish run or spirit run, if you will. And that's when we'll do the vodka, the gin, and the Arkansas brown runs.
So, and this is just leaning into the whiskey nerd version of me, right?
Yeah.
You've got a tall cotton gin, right?
Yep.
And you've got this Arkansas brown that you're producing, and so you have these barrels that are you're dumping whiskey out of. Are you considering taking any of your gin and barrel aging it in your Arkansas brown barrels?
Wow, that is so funny you asked that. My son just did that 2 months ago, and he and he did it with the gin, and our gin is I didn't say this, but our gin doesn't have any sweet potatoes in it. It's corn and wheat. But we took some of that gin and proofed it down, put it in the barrel, and I think 2 months ago. So we're gonna see how that does, and it could be something remarkable that comes out of that. We just you don't know, but that's something he wanted to do, and it's his little pet project he's working on. So it may be something that we do in the future.
Yeah, because I know there's a sub segment of gin drinkers that are into barrel aged gins, and then there's a group of people who are whiskey guys that don't really get into gin that much, but they will absolutely try a barrel aged gin, right? Just kind of see what happens there.
Yeah.
And I think if I'm thinking about the location where you guys are, the physical location. If somebody's going to come in for the King Biscuit Blues Festival, do you guys have a cocktail program on site as well?
We do. Actually, the cocktail space we think it's pretty amazing. And you come in, it's a more relaxed environment. You come in, there's a full service bar serving Delta Dirt cocktails, by the way. But it's a relaxing space. There is a natural skylight that's in that room, in that building when we bought that building. And we have the bar underneath that skylight. But when you come in, I just think people enjoy the space, and they said, man, this could be in downtown New York. It could be in any downtown city in the U.S. Is that well done and that nice? But I don't feel like, uptight or anything. It's comfortable, and I like being in here. And then in 23, our distillery won the Arkansas Governor's Tourism Attraction of the Year award. I don't know if you read that, but that was pretty amazing for us to get. And we beat out a river. Who beats out the Buffalo River, right?
Right.
So it was nice. It was a nice recognition for and for our distillery over in the Delta to be an attraction for people across the state to come visit.
Okay, and I know I'm hopping back and forth, so I'm apologize for that. But for the Arkansas Brown, is like when it goes into the bottle, what's its proof? What does it look like whenever it actually ends up in the package?
Oh yeah. So this is a podcast. I know your audience can't see this, but I'm going to show it to you. This is the Deep Roots Arkansas Brown. Okay. So it goes into the bottle. This bottle tells a story about my granddad, and at the top of the bottle, it's got the 1949. It's got his story on the side of the label there and his signature. But my granddad was born December 2nd, 1906. So the proof on this is 106. in his honor. And I didn't even tell you about the vodka. The vodka is 86 proof versus the standard 80 proof.
Mhm.
But that was the number of acres that my granddad bought in that sharecrop, out of that sharecropping system, 86 acres. So we dropped the proof, or took the proof up to 86.
Mhm.
But yeah, this is a 106 at the deep roots, and then we have a sweet roots, same mash bill, corn, sweet potatoes, rye, and barley, but the proof we took it down below 100 at 96.
Mhm.
My son was trying to make me, understand that not everybody drinks high proof. I'm like, okay, I get it. So he came up with this founder's edition. So it's a little lower proof.
Mhm.
Still both amazing. Both are really good products.
So yeah, that's thinking about Arkansas specifically, right? And so you
Yeah.
guys have the white spirit that you're making. You put it in the barrel. You're aging it in Arkansas,
Yeah.
and most everyone in the whiskey space is really familiar with what happens to whiskey in the barrel in Kentucky, in Indiana, maybe in Missouri, right? There's that belt. If you were talking about belts, right? There's this place, and then even a little bit more so Tennessee, but you guys are much further south. If we were to think about that, have you encountered anything that makes your flavor profile and it being unique from where you guys are aging specifically?
No, I probably lose my share of angel share given the temperature. The barrel house has clearly no temperature control. So if it's we get change in weather here pretty regularly, and sometimes even within the season. And that's what you really want and need. If it's cold outside, that barrel room is really cold. If it's hot outside, it's hot in that barrel room. So you want that product going in and out of that barrel with that temperature change. And I think Arkansas is ripe for that kind of change. So we get change in seasons. Get 4 distinct changes in seasons, but with the way that the weather is now, I can get that even during the season. So I guess time will tell how well that does, but I think we're in a perfect band, as you would say, for the whiskey to really maturate in and out of those barrels in our part of the state.
Without a doubt. And so you mentioned way back that you got involved with the ACSA
Yeah.
pretty early on, but you're in the state of Arkansas. Is there a smaller like craft spirits body within the state of Arkansas in a similar fashion?
Yeah, we started one since I've gotten involved, or since we started up. There's been a Arkansas Distillers Guild that started, which is
Mhm.
it's been pretty cool. That I think the state we have 7 active distilleries in the state of Arkansas now,
Mhm.
and that may not sound like a lot, but it is a lot because 10 years ago there were 1, maybe 2 active
Mhm.
distilleries in the state. So it's good. And with this Distillers Guild, we have worked with the Department of Agriculture and trying to do some things like Kentucky or Tennessee would do. Like there's a trail of those distilleries across the state, and they created this. I think it's a passport. So you get a stamp at those distilleries, and I can't remember what you got, but I know at our distillery, you get something different at each distillery, whether it's a discount or a free tour or something. But it encourages tourism around the distillery industry in your
Mhm.
state, which is new to this state over the since the last 10 years.
Yeah, and so and I know you've got another event coming up, and I don't want to steal too much of your time.
Sure.
So thinking about Delta Dirt, right? So you haven't been around for a long time.
Right.
You've been around for a long time in a small business perspective, right? Because most small businesses are done within the first 24 months, and so you've aged past that. You've grown through a lot of growing pains. What do you think that Delta Dirt as a distillery looks like in 5-7 years?
Wow. For us, I think we continue to grow. We're right now in the midst of building out a barrel house because the space that I had created for the barrels is already filled up, and I got to do something else. So,
Mhm.
and we're working on doing that on Cherry Street. So here's another thing, right? We've got the distillery. that continues to grow. Every product we release, we don't have a whole lot of products. We just got we have the vodka, which is a premium product. We got the gin, which is a superior product, and then we got this Arkansas Brown, which is unique to that part of the spirits industry. And we're doing some things with the gin. So I think whatever we release, I want it to be differentiating to us, differentiating to the brand and to Delta, to Delta Dirt and the Delta area. I want people to be able to come here and visit the distillery itself, see a raw sweet potato and raw corn be ground. They get the aroma. Most people have never smelled sweet potatoes fermenting before, so I think that's a unique thing, and that we'll continue to have in the years to come. And then walk next door to the barrel house and see the barrels maturing in there. And we are working on the next phase that my wife has also convinced me that we should be doing, which is a food complement. So we hopefully we said we were going to get this done sooner, but the business just kept taking off. A brick oven pizza place next to the distillery here. So over the next 5 years, I think as a brand, we're going to continue to be known, especially in this region. We have distribution in Arkansas and Mississippi and Tennessee. We just got added on in Texas, and we're working on some things further east, which would be Alabama and North Carolina, and I'm hoping to add Georgia. So I want to be known across the region as a really good brand, and making some amazing products from some things that we grow locally to us. And then I want people to go on the internet and shop and have it shipped to, heck, they can have it shipped to New York and Montana if they want. So it can be enjoyed online. We just got an online compliment back in November, so people can go and shop online. So I think we're ripe for a growth spurt in this region, and just put our thumbprint in the market for our brand.
And it seems like you're heading in that direction, right? Because I'm seeing the name pop up in different places, right? So whenever I try to do research on where I want to, who do I want to talk to next, right?
Yeah.
It's not the first time that I've seen Delta Dirt pop up, and it won't be the last time that anyone sees it pop up. I mean, it's obviously a growing brand, and knowing that you have online distribution helps significantly for those of us in the areas that are not being directly serviced yet. But none of that is a supplement for going and visiting on site, right? Because these on site experiences are the thing that make it gives the personality to it, right? We hear the story, but you go on site, you see the people, you meet the people, and we didn't even really touch on this. And we'll have to have another conversation. But this is a family thing, right? This is not just Harvey. This is Harvey, and this is his wife. You've mentioned her a couple of times, and your son is involved. Like, this is a family affair in the same way that farms are a family affair often.
Yeah. Actually, it's full family. It's my wife, myself, and our two sons, and they're young men. They're 29 and 33. So this is going to be their future, and want to pass this on to them. And our daughter is involved. Whenever she can, she's in the Navy. She's been in the Navy for the last 13 years. But whenever she's home, guess what? She's down here helping us.
Right. And there's even a bit about being able to automate your potato washing, right? Because you had to do that by hand for a long time, and now you've got a different thing that's there. You might need to bring back the hand washing, give people an on-site experience where they can walk through the process of making the mash and let them wash it by hand.
I like that. My wife wasn't a big fan of that, but that's what we had to do for a while.
Well, I mean, I think about it. I don't know if you've ever done a Maker's Mark tour, but before COVID, you could walk into the mash tanks and you could stick your finger down in the mash, and people really loved that experience. And it was hot and it didn't taste super great, right?
Yeah.
But let them wash some potatoes. Let them learn a few things.
Yeah, I like that a lot. Okay.
Yeah. So, Harvey, you've given me far more time than I deserve. I'm super appreciative. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that you want to make sure that we talk about before we put a pin in this?
No, I mean, I really appreciate the opportunity. I do. And just the opportunity to tell our story. I still feel like we're just a small farm family, and but I think great things can come from small places. And we surprise ourselves. And I'd like to be able to surprise as many people come visit us at the distillery. And when they taste our products, I think they would be pleasantly surprised. Like, I had no idea sweet potatoes could do this.
And that's the key for me, right? Is I like talking to craft distillers, because that's where the inventiveness comes from, right? The idea of putting sweet potatoes into a traditional bourbon mash. A large distillery doesn't necessarily have the time to do that kind of experimentation, and the cost of doing it is tremendous because they're operating in an economy of scale that's beyond doing interesting things, right? They've got to wait for somebody else to figure out it's interesting, and then they'll invest their money. But you guys are doing the good work. You're doing the work that is bringing us new flavor profiles, new stories, tremendous stories, things that deserve attention. And so, I'm going to invite everybody on that I can that's going to have those kinds of stories. So, I said
Nice.
we can't make more time, so I am super thankful for what you do give me. It's the only commodity that's not renewable is time, and so thanks for hopping on, and we'll have to have another conversation.
Sounds good. Thank you so much, John.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Embellish podcast. If you enjoyed this, please leave me a review on whatever platform that you're consuming this on, and leave a comment if possible. Hit me up on social media on TikTok or Instagram using Embellish Pod, and give me a follow so you can keep up with what's going on here. I can be found at www.embellishpod.com with all of my links, accounts, contact details, and more. Thanks for stopping by.